what I found is there was a big gap in terms of team development, especially with the teams that I was developing, and nobody was really talking about the me work in teamwork. That's what I like to call it. And so you've heard teamwork to dream work. I like to talk about me work first. You've got to work on yourself and be a great teammate. That's foundational to the team. You can have great leadership, and that's important. And you can have great relationships, and that's really important. But you got to make sure you bring that commitment to being a great teammate to that relationship. Because just like a marriage, if one person's not committed in that marriage, it doesn't matter how much therapy or counseling you go to, your marriage is not going to ever be functional until you're both committed to it. And that's why you are the team. It's about you bringing you.
So you are the team. And I should have mentioned earlier that this is not only for a traditional someone who considers themselves part of the team and not the leader. Actually, the leader is part of the team. So if you're listening today and you're in the leadership role, this is for you as well, because part of our job as leaders is to help the team, the total team, function well. And again, we are part of the team. So regardless of what your title is, and even if you're a leader at work or somewhere, at some point you play another role. So would you talk just briefly about that whole idea that the leader is also part of this and should be learning this material also?
Yeah, you bet. Leaders are, first and foremost, if you're going to encourage your team to play as a team, you have to make sure that you're willing to live the same values that you're asking them to live. So you're part of the team. You may not have the title of teammate because you're the leader, but you are part of that team. And almost every leader reports up to another team. And so there's opportunity here for leaders as well to learn how to be a better teammate, say on the senior leadership team they belong to, or middle level leadership team. And you're right, Tom, everybody belongs to a team somewhere. Families are a great example. In fact, in the book, I talk a lot about my own family. I'm going to be writing I'm writing my second book right now. My third book that I'm going to write is actually going to be titled "You Are the Team for Families." I'm going to gear it towards families because I've had some people that have actually, some leaders that have used my materials. I had one in particular that took it on a family retreat. They went through the book as a family, and he said it was great. And so you belong to a team somewhere. So there's opportunities for you to learn from the principles within this book, those values that are talking.
And your book gets really great reviews. I've checked it out on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and it's available a lot of places. But one of the things I've seen is that it's very readable. And so I'm assuming, since you mentioned the family, that it's readable for all ages, and it's written at a level that most everyone can really understand.
I did that purposely, actually. I wrote it, and even with my editor, I made sure she was aware that I was writing it at the simplest level I could write it at, because I wanted this to apply to every type of team and every education level. So I realized that there's teams where reading may not be a strength with some of the members of that team. I want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to read and learn about this message.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let me get into the 6 simple ways that you mentioned that teammates can go from good to great. So the first way that you talk about in your book is being selfless. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so selflessness is the core, the foundation of all teamwork. Selflessness itself, and every one of these 6 B's, I have 21 concepts that hang on each of the 6 B's. The 3 concepts that hang on this be selfless, are to serve and to put others first, or what I call the platinum rule. It's not my rule, it's something somebody else coined, but it's the platinum rule. I can talk about that more in a minute. And putting the team first. Those are the 3 concepts under selflessness. And do you want me to dive into just one of those, Tom? Like
absolutely,
maybe service?
Sure.
Okay. So to me, service is probably one of the most important things a team can actively be doing. I had a client of mine a while back who was leading a team that was very negative, a lot of backbiting, a lot of gossip. And he said, I love everything about my job, Mike. I just can't stand the people problems. All the backbiting, all the evil speaking, just the horrible things that sometimes all of us experience on teams with people, because we're talking about relationships, and relationships just include those types of things. He said, I just sometimes don't even want to go to work. He says, but I noticed one person on my team who started making a big difference. She just started asking members of the team what she could do to help them. And before he knew it, other people started doing the same thing, and it became a real contagious energy. He said it completely changed how the team worked together. The relationships improved. They started becoming more positive instead of negative. I mean, it became a more enjoyable place to work. And I get that, because I remember Simon Sinek is a leadership author. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. And he once said, he was talking about marriage relationships. And he said, she didn't fall in love with you because you brought her flowers every year on Valentine's Day. She fell in love with you because when you woke up in the morning, instead of going right to your phone, you said good morning. She fell in love with you because when you were going down to get a drink, you asked her if she would like something to drink. She fell in love with you not because you brought her flowers on her birthday, every year, but also because when she had a horrible day and she wanted to share it with you, instead of saying, wait, let me tell you about my horrible day, you said the 3 magic words, which are tell me more. Okay. And she told, and you listen more. Now, here's a cool thing around this. I had a student of mine, I teach at Southern Utah University, I teach an online course, and she came up to me and she said, you know what, Professor Rogers, I had an aha moment. She said, I realize now why my parents divorced. And she said the reason they divorced is because my father stopped serving my mother.
Oh my, wow.
And I thought, wow, if you look at any relationship and you look at teams, where they're the most dysfunctional is when people stop thinking about others first and start putting themselves first. That's when that selflessness goes away. When they stop serving each other and caring about each other first, that's when the relationship goes dysfunctional.
I've got to say, no one ever talks about this. I've never really heard. I mean, it's what we should do in all areas of life. But for the team to work well, you're saying that regardless of what that team is, we should look at our teammates and see what their needs are and try to serve them.
Right, absolutely. That's when teams start doing that, it just completely changes them. And like I said, with Simon Sinek's example, it doesn't happen once a year. It's something that happens regularly, consistently over time. And when they stop, what happens with a lot of people on teams is they start getting kind of this attitude, which is it's all about me and it's only about you if I can get something for me. And we've all had those kind of teammates. But really it should be, it's all about you and it's only about me if I can get something for you. That's the shift that needs to take place on teams. And when that happens and selflessness flowers, that team, that's when the magic begins on teams.
Wow, I love that. So be selfless is the first one that you talk about, and then you also mentioned be truthful.
Yeah, be trustworthy. Yeah. Okay. So, and be truthful is actually a concept under that, which is to be transparent. Don't lie. I saw some research done, actually I cite this in the book, that on average humans are lied to 200 times a day. And people go, whoa, 200 times a day. But when you think about what a lie is, it's not telling the complete truth. It's deciding not to say something because it'll put you in a negative light, instead of coming out with the truth. It's not being transparent. There's a lot of things that make up that, being truthful. But it's also about doing what you say you will do. And it's also about being bold, direct, and honest. See, when you're bold and direct and honest with each other, that improves the trust on the team as well. But That's what Patrick Lencioni in his book, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team, talks about when he's speaking about healthy, productive conflict. You have to have conflict on teams, but it has to be productive and it has to be healthy, not personal. And so when you start doing those things, that's what improves the trustworthiness.
So the truthfulness comes outside of the meeting situation. I mean, how does a leader encourage his people to be trustworthy with one another? And that doesn't just happen in the boardroom, or not, although it can, obviously, but there's more to it than that. It's these personal relationships that we have with one another outside of the meeting place.
Yeah, well, it has to start in the meeting, actually.
Okay.
That's the best place for it to start. And unfortunately, it doesn't happen in meetings. You have a lot of passive participation in meetings. You have a lot of people that do the meeting after the meeting, which is after the meeting, they run to their coworker and say, I don't agree with what she said. And what he said, I'm not in line. Well, why didn't you speak up? Because they didn't feel like there wasn't enough trust in the meeting to do that. And one of the ways leaders can start building that, because again, it starts with the meetings, and then it goes out. That's the way I look at it anyway. Okay. So one of the things leaders can do is set up norms. Set up a group of 3 to 5 norms that you agree to as a group, how you will engage in conflict. In essence, giving each other permission to engage in that conflict. And when somebody doesn't engage that conflict, you facilitate that conflict. You call them out. You ask them for their opinion, until you get to the point where everybody feels comfortable doing that. But there's some other things that have to happen before that, Tom, and trust is a big one. But there are things you can do to build that trust to get to that point as well.
Then thirdly is being humble.
Yeah. So and not from. I mean, when we think of being humble, we're thinking about putting away pride. And certainly that's part of being humble. And it's part of some of the concepts that I talk about as well. But I look at it as being a humble teammate a little bit differently. I talk about accountability. One of the things I learned as I developed teams is teammates. In fact, this was probably the reason why I wrote this. Is probably the primary reason I wrote this book. I noticed as I was going out and doing interviews that everybody was always pointing their fingers at everybody else. And they were never pointing here and saying, hey, I could step up and be a better teammate by doing this and this and this. They'd say, no, so-and-so's the problem on this team.
Yeah, right.
And so I looked at that. That's probably the first kind of aha moment I had around this book. Learning from your mistakes, being humble enough to realize it's okay to make mistakes. You have to be careful. If you're in a medical facility, you're a doctor, sometimes mistakes I was working for MD Anderson. I was doing some facilitation and consulting for them out in Texas, large cancer research facility. And they let me know that not all mistakes are good mistakes. But I believe most mistakes are only good mistakes if we learn from those mistakes. So if we're willing to learn and we're willing to learn quickly, then definitely we're going to come out the better for that. And then finally is, there's actually 2 other areas. One is to seek feedback, regularly seek feedback from your teammates. Leaders do a great job of seeking feedback from those they lead in one-on-ones. There's a lot of leaders will say, what can I do better? But do we do that with teammates? And I always encourage one-on-ones with teammates. So I talk more about that in the book. And then also showing gratitude. I don't know if you ever heard the story of who packs your parachute, but you ever heard that story, Tom?
No.
All right, let me tell you quickly this story. This is a story by a captain in the Navy. His name is Captain Charles Plumb, and he gave me permission to use the story in the book. It's a powerful story. He had flown over 100 missions, and he was in Vietnam, and he got shot down, and he parachuted safely, but into the hands of the Vietnamese. And that at the time was not the Marriott or the Hilton, right? It was a horrible experience. I think he was there for 6 years. And he doesn't really focus on those experiences in this story. He talks about a time he was out to dinner with his wife years later, and this man kept staring at him. And he's like, why does that man keep looking at me? And he noticed that he was coming over to him, and then he starts pointing at him, and he says, you're Captain Charles Plumb. You're Captain Charles Plumb. I know you are. And he said, yeah, I am Captain Charles Plumb. What can I do for you? He said, I packed your parachute the day you parachuted into the Vietnamese. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
And he said, Captain Charles Plumb said, I was just speechless. He says, I couldn't really say anything except thank you, thank you. And that night, he said, I just kept thinking over and over, these men down there that were packing parachutes that I didn't acknowledge. I never said good morning. I
Wow.
never said
Wow.
how are you doing? They were, lowly sailors in the bottom of the ship. I was a captain.
Hmm.
But from that day on forward, he realized that there's plenty of people that are packing our parachutes. And so, the question is, who's packing your parachute on your
Wow.
team? And are you demonstrating that gratitude to them?
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that. And everybody has their role, and everybody is important regardless of, or they wouldn't be on the team. I mean, they're on the team because they have an important role. And I really think that so often we look at the leader as being the most important, but a lot of times it's that the leader is simply functioning in a different way or different role on that team. And I know that I'm in a leadership role in my church, but I could do virtually nothing without my team. I mean, I would be so lost because I only have gifts in certain areas, and so I have a team that's gifted in so many ways that I have no clue of what to do. And so
Yeah.
and they pack my parachute and I pack theirs.
Yeah. And when you look at a team, everybody's part. Anybody who's helping you be who you are is part of your team. If you want to look at it at the bigger level, who packs your parachute at home?
Yeah.
Who's packing your parachute in the building that you're in? If you're in a business building, who's the janitor? They're packing your parachute. They're making it clean. I mean, you can go down to a lot or go up to a lot of different levels and discover there are a lot of people packing our parachutes that we don't say thank you to enough.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're just joining us, my name is Pastor Tom, and this is the 24 Today podcast. And you can find more of my writings and blog and podcasts on 24today.org. That's 24today.org. And my guest is Michael Rogers, and he has written a book entitled You Are the Team, 6 Simple Ways Teammates Can Go From Good to Great. And Michael, your website is michaelgrogers.com, right? Michael G. Rogers. Been to it. Really, really a great site. You can find a lot of helpful things there. Anything you want to share about your site in particular?
No, I mean, what you will find, just one thing, you will find on the site a number of things. You'll find a link to my books, my products. You'll find a link to speaking. You'll find a link to my blog. There's a lot of good stuff out there on my blog, a lot of good stories, a lot of videos that you could use a leader with your team. And so there's some of those resources as well, as in addition to a little bit about myself too.
Okay. And again, your book is You Are the Team, and you can just Google that, and you can find it all over the place. There's a workbook as well, so that's awesome. So we have discussed so far, there are 6 simple ways that teammates can go from good to great. We've talked about being selfless. We've talked about being trustworthy. We've talked about being humble. And then I love this one, being positive. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so let me start this one off with a story, because I love this particular story, which is it's a story told. It's an old, I think it's a Japanese fable, told of a palace of 1,000 mirrors, and there was this happy little puppy that decided to enter the palace of 1,000 mirrors. And as he entered the door, he looked in, he saw 1,000 other happy, energetic puppies smiling right back at him. And the faster he wagged his tail, the faster they wagged their tails. And he thought, as he left that palace, he thought, this is a great place. I've got to come back someday. And then there was this old grumpy puppy who decided to enter the palace of 1,000 mirrors. And when he looked into the palace, he saw 1,000 other grumpy dogs looking right back at him. And he began to growl because it scared him. They growled back. And he thought, as he left that place, I'm never coming back here. This is a really unhappy, depressing, down kind of place. Well, of course, the lesson is you reflect who you are. And on teams, when you decide to personally bring your positive to the team, it's contagious. And the rest of the team becomes positive as well. But it has to start with one positive teammate. Just like the example I used of my client friend, who had a lot of unhappy people on his team, didn't like his job because of all the people problems. When one person stepped up and decided to start serving others, it changes. It's the law of reciprocity. We can't
Yes.
help but be kind to others who are kind to us. We can't help to serve others who are serving us. That's what happens. So be a positive teammate. I talk about refraining from negativity, gossip in particular. It's horrible on teams, but it's something that happens on a lot of teams.
Yep.
Complimenting, encouraging each other, and celebrating teammate success. Get away from envy. Start celebrating with others.
Yep. And really, like you said, it's that meeting after the meeting where a lot of that negativity comes in when you're out of the meeting, and you just say things that you don't need to be saying, and it's contagious and really helpful, but simple ways. I think one is we've talked about just serving others, finding a way, trying to see what the needs are in your teammates and just start to serve them, and that becomes contagious and changes the whole environment. And another one is as you said, among the other things, being positive. Just I just think that we can get through virtually anything if we have hope and we're positive, as a team. But you can't hard to get through anything at all when you're down, and when you think, when you look at the glass half empty or full, whatever it is, and you just everything is negative. It's so hard to exist.
Yeah, it's a horrible, horrible place to be. Yeah, but you see it. Unfortunately, you see it in a good portion of the relationships out there. Whether that's a marriage or family or teams. But I'll give you an example too. If we could go back to the service piece, Tom,
Sure.
Just for a minute, because I had a thought around that, because I know many of the people that are probably watching this or listening to this they have families. And one activity, I want to give you a practical thing that you can do with your family right off that will help you see the power of living these 6 B's, and particularly the one of giving service. Bring your family together. Talk about what service looks like in a family. You can do this with your teams as well, by the way. I do this all the time with teams. What does service look like on your team? What does service look like in your family? How different would our family be, or how different would our team be if we were serving each other more regularly? And then create a plan on how you will do that. And every day, have your kids and yourself commit to doing something nice for each person in the family every day. And come back in a week and report and watch the difference that it makes. We're talking about being positive, and you went back to service again, because I think this is a great correlation.
Yeah.
What you will find is when you start serving each other, the negativity, or in homes, the fighting. Kids love to fight, and you get a lot of that contention in your home and a lot of that conflict. You'll see that begin to diminish rapidly when the kids start serving each other, when you start serving each other as a family. So just a practical thing to do, and it makes a huge difference.
Be selfless, be trustworthy, be humble, be positive, and then be respectful is another idea that you have in the book.
Yeah, so being respectful is about understanding others, taking the time to understand others. Before you shoot off that email that you're going to regret, take a timeout, maybe a 24-hour timeout, or go consult. What I like to do is go to my wife and say, "What do you think?" And she'll say, "I don't think you should send that." I'm like, "Okay, good. Now I have had some time to digest it." I often with email, if I'm frustrated by something, I will take a time out before I send it. So it's just trying to understand others, and it's about trying to be more empathetic as well. There's a video done by the Cleveland Clinic. You can research it on YouTube. It's a wonderful video. They teach empathy in the hospital, and you see all of these patients, and you see doctors, and you see others, and these labels pop up over their head of things that they're struggling with.
Oh, okay.
Have you seen that before?
No, but I'm getting
Yeah.
I'm getting the picture literally. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you'll see one pop up, and this person will say, well, they just found out. I might not be getting all these right, but they just found out they have stage 4, whatever type of
Okay.
cancer it is, or this person just it's a husband and a wife, and a label pops over, and the husband is bringing the wife some coffee and says, the label that pops up says their son is on life support, or something of that nature. I mean, it's just all these things that start popping up, and you see all these people. Some of them are good things, but a lot of them are really hard things. And the thing that we find with people is that we're all going through something.
Yes.
Like I know in my neighborhood, just by service that I've done in my church callings I've had in my church, that there isn't a single home in my neighborhood here where somebody's not suffering with something, in a period of time.
Yeah.
Whether it's a financial crisis, or the death of a loved one, or a child that's gone wayward, or something, something related to losing your job. I mean, there's so many things we deal with, and when we can understand each other better, we will treat each other better. It's part of that whole empathy thing. And then finally, the piece around be respectful is just to be kind, to listen, to try to be interested instead of always trying to be interesting. And just, being there for others, and saying please, thank you, and you're welcome, and just the general be kind kind of things that we should do as a teammate, but as a human being, quite honestly.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, and then your last one is be great. Be great.
Yeah, so I put this at the end, and you'll see everything's sandwiched between selflessness and be great.
Okay.
And the be great, I put that in there because it's kind of that final conclusion. And it just simply, this one is just about being the best you can be. You bring you every single day to the team. You do more than is expected. You work on developing yourself. You work on understanding the vision. You bring solutions to the team, not just problems. And you're part of the solution, and just don't bring problems, bring those solutions as well. And it's about inspiring others. You don't have to lead people to be a leader. You can inspire others. And if you're inspiring somebody to be better than what they are, then you're a leader. That, in my definition, you're a leader. And can you imagine, Tom, a team of people who are inspiring each other?
Yes.
What kind of difference that would make?
Or a marriage, or
a marriage. Yeah.
Family,
I mean, I always think in my marriage, I've been married 31 years. And the thing that I've learned in my marriage is kind of when I'm down, she's really good at pulling me up. And when she's down, I think I'm pretty good at pulling her up. And we work together on this marriage, until we meet our ultimate goal,
Sure.
Yeah.
Again, this is Pastor Tom of the 24 Today podcast, and I'm with Michael Rogers, who's written a book called You Are the Team, and his website is michaelgrogers.com. Very interesting material on just being a good teammate, regardless of what your role is there. If you're listening today, I know you're part of a team, so be the best teammate that you can be. Find some practical ways to just change your environment and your team, and how that team can really make a difference, and you can change the world through your team. I love that. Michael, thank you for being my guest today. It's been a real joy.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Same here.
To get to know you better. And again, I encourage you to look up Michael's book, You Are the Team. Go to michaelgrogers.com to find out more. And again, thank you for listening to the 24 Today podcast. And if you like this video, this podcast, click like and share if you will. And also subscribe to this channel. Thanks again for listening, and thank you, Mike. And we'll see you next time.